After a very busy week, we are back with episode number 3 of the Splash Komiks Podcast. I am your host, as always, Chino and Dean. And this afternoon, yeah, we're doing an afternoon. I have two special guests, hopefully three. Sir Ariel will be catching up, hopefully. But right now, joining me are two members of Komikon Inc. as well, and as well as two veteran comics artists in their own rights. To my left is Sir Jon Zamar,
Hello.
and and below is Sir Lyndon Gregorio.
Good afternoon.
All right, sirs. First off, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it. Okay, so first of all, kumusta po kayo? How are you? How are you doing?
Lyndon?
I am currently taking care of my toddler daughter, so yeah, expect some kind of pauses from my end as I try to placate her when she wakes up.
All right.
Okay. I'm doing well naman. I've been working at home naman even before no pandemic, so nothing new. Only I do have more companions sa bahay ngayon since most of them are staying at home. Projects wise, I'm pretty fortunate that I still have projects. Um, Not sure what 2021 will bring kasi a lot of companies have taken a hit during this pandemic. So medyo unsure yung future natin going forward next year.
All right. So yeah, well, we can always hope for the best, naman. Um, so I want to go first. Start off by going back to the beginning. So I want to talk about your journeys as comics artists. Because, like I said, you both are pretty much veterans in this industry. So you know, how did you start? How did you get into it? Inspirations, stuff like that.
Okay,
I'll
I'll
start.
start. Sige, start.
Uh, I don't know about the lessons that you take because I know from my years as a professional, uh, whatever you've learned, whatever people have learned, kind of quickly becomes irrelevant because now when I was starting out, there was no social media, and now it's all social media. And whatever I've learned, parang it's turning irrelevant because people are mastering new forms of digital and online content production. But anyway, I started out as professionally in the Philippine Star. I'm still published in the Philippine Star. Been going on since 1998, and that's 22 years already. And then I published my first book as immediate as the year 2000. That's my main, well, half of my income is coming from Philippine Star uh, contributor fees, and then the rest is book sales, merchandise sales, events, and commissions. That's it.
Okay. So
Okay,
John.
so I started formally siguro since I attended an art school. I studied fine arts sa UST. I was going into the industry thinking that I would be an illustrator. Pero that stopped when I actually did stop going to school na. My first work was sa local scene would be being a staff member of Culture Crash, wherein I was more on the production side rather than the creative side, which continued till up till now. So mostly I do production work for comic books. Production work meaning I do the less glamorous side of comics, which would be yung um, writing and yung illustrating. Those are yung rock stars ng industry. I do the more yung grunt work ba. I do lettering. I also do coloring. But right now the credentials of the colorists are catching up to the illustrator as well. Pero I'm not at that level. I do render work and I do lettering work. I also do pre-press work for comic books. Pre-press work meaning I'm the one who gets everything from the writers and the illustrators and put it together, and that's what the finished product that most people get. So for my so that was 2002, 2003, yeah, 2003. That's my formal introduction to the local comic book scene as a staff member of Culture Crash. Eventually, I moved on, still doing production work for mostly foreign books. I do production for independent books for publishers in the US and other countries. Locally, yeah, I keep my local work uh, by supporting other people, especially through Komikon. I also do my titles, which is more of a hobby than an actual work. So yeah, yun yung journey ko as a comic book creator.
Okay, great. So, who would you say are, or is, or are your inspirations, yung idols nyo, or yung, yeah, I guess inspirations, influences when it comes to yung art nyo and making comics?
I go first.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm greatly influenced by the 90s. So the 90s. This was the year that 7 superstars from Marvel broke out of Marvel and decided to run their own companies, uh, to handle their own creations on their own terms. I'm talking about the Image 7. So that's Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Will Sportacio, Valentino, at si Eric Larson. So that's from yung foreign side. Locally, there was also a movement here, partially spurred on by Will's Den. These are yung alamat people. I remember yung, this is from story, this is not for yung first-hand experience, but I always remember the story that Wills came here to the Philippines looking for more talent. And it inspired a bunch of creators, a group of creators to create their own titles. And this was Alamat Comics. So that's Sir Budget Pan, Sir Marco Di Maano, Sir Jerry Alangilan, sina Sir Carlo Vergara. These were yung trailblazers natin. These were the people who decided na we will self-publish. This was kasi rin yung time na I guess the doors of the industry are starting to close down. Because beforehand, we do have a thriving comic book industry. You can have a career doing comics. But during this time, I guess it was winding down, it was closing down for some reason. So those are the people that influenced me to do comics. It's kasi it broadened yung possible future mo instead of trying to look for someone as your employer to do comics. You could actually make your own comics. So these were the people. Locally, also sina Lyndon. Lyndon was at the forefront of self-publishing then. Sir Paul started with publishers, but eventually also took up the cudgels of self-publishing, even self-distribution and self-marketing. So yeah, those were the guys. I mean, the do-it-yourself guys.
Okay, for me, it was Paul Medina Jr. for locally, and then Scott Adams of Dilbert International. Paul Medina showed the way to revolution, well, popularize yung mga collecting your comic strips into collections. It was I remember a PLSU graduate student who did a thesis and proposed na he sell uh, Baboy strips in the collection form. So he figured it all out, and then Paul Medina copied it. It started with Anvil, and then by book 9, in the late 90s, he went for it for himself, for much a bigger cut. And he was treated very favorably by National Books, by Power Books. Uh, Very good royalty fees. I think he was already pre-selling in thousands. It was already considered sold because of his following. So he adapted a lot of his business strategies. Um, I preempted already the idea that you don't need a publisher because a publisher in perpetuity will have uh, a bulk of the royalties or the profits, and then creator will only have like 10% uh, royalty fee. So I self-published at that point, and also the publisher will have control, marketing control, trademarks, copyrights with the title. So any future projects will be decided by them. I was thinking my imagination would be much better if I just followed the business with myself. International wise, Scott Adams also followed the same route. He dedicated towards a target, the office worker in Dilbert. So I studied this, and it was very successful at the time in the 90s. And I followed that format as well as a self-publisher.
All right. So, sir, you mentioned international and local. Have their works how have their works reflected into yours?
I'll answer first.
Okay.
Pugit Baboy, of course, aimed at the community with his work. All the adventures of a community that has the immediate family, the neighbors, the senator, the policeman. So he developed a situational comedy and character-driven arcs. And I was thinking by that point, by that concept, what do I know? If you follow the writer's adage, write what you know. What do I know? So I thought of the friends since college. So for the first 5 years of Beerkada, I followed mga Barkada adventures who like to drink beer. So it's called Beerkada. And then after graduation, the rest of the story, as they developed it. Um, Pero yun nga, from there, by after year 20, all of my ideas, all of the, I was thinking of Simpson's strategy. And then after 20 years, you run out of, you've run through the parodies, the movie parodies, you've run through the classics. So what I'm doing now is memes and just, wholesale, exploration of other comedy genres. Maybe after 30 years, I'll try doing drama, action, adventure. Pero I'm still milking out, exploring all the ideas that I can from comedy.
Yeah. Actually, when I first was introduced to Lyndon was the Manix nung era niya. He was doing yung college humor, which Manix got famous for before. And then Lyndon moved on. I don't know why he moved on.
It was part of my
You
plan.
allowed you allowed your characters to grow old.
Yes. And, yeah, we discussed it with everybody interested. I talked about this with Mannix during a talk in UP during a session of comics, and I said, if you dedicate yourself to one aspect, especially college, you have to write for college for the rest of your life. But for Beerkada, I already planned it that the characters will grow. You don't see that too often. The last time someone attempted to follow characters that grow old, that have families, was Gasoline Alley, if anyone remembers. Pero even the Simpsons were stuck in the family. And with the Simpsons solution was their past kept moving. It's a moving goalpost. It became, when Lisa and Marge was dating, it was the 80s, and they moved 70s, and they moved it to the 80s, and to the 90s, and into 2000s. It was a moving goalpost, and it was a shifting reality. I myself know, for now, are dedicated na, no, these characters will grow old, will have families, and I'm thinking in the future, in 16 years, when the characters Glenn and Choppy's daughter, when they reach college age, everything loops back to the very
This
start.
year, go.
Like it's a circle. And then Glenn will be the father who sends his kid to college and saying it's an adventure. Just like Glenn's father promised him.
So it will be beer click na.
And then probably I move on to something else. The story has come full circle.
Yeah.
Right.
On my part, like I said, most of my influences were do-it-yourself people. So it really inspired me to actually find my own way of doing things. So if you are familiar with my work, it's never been published by anyone else or like that. So I'm pretty much went the self publishing route. So most of my work, while it is considered yung themes ko are mainstream, it is an independent work. Since I'm doing pretty much superheroes, um, fantasy, sword and sorcery stuff. So that's pretty much mainstream if we're considering themes. Pero yun nga medyo blurry yung lines dito sa Philippines ng what is mainstream and what is independent, especially if we're talking about themes. But technicalities, yes, it is still independent. It's a do-it-yourself project. It's not that well known. Actually, only a few people are aware that I do comics. Most people, if you say my name, would just say I'm from Komikon, and then he does comics. But if you ask them what I do, what comics I make, they don't know. They just know I'm from Komikon. So yung entrepreneurial spirit ng Image, which I did not really follow since I don't really make that much money from my comic books, and yung do-it-yourself spirit ng Alamat and the other self-publishers. That's what I mostly got from my influences.
All right. So, I want to go specifically towards Beerkada first because I think to speak personally, Beerkada was my introduction to you, Sir Lyndon, and eventually to Komikon. Um, what I like about Beerkada is that they do grow, and it's sort of um, it's generally over the course of every year that you release one, they mature. And were these characters based on anyone particular?
They were based on my college friends, my org mates from civil engineering. But that was the 90s. I don't know what happened to them afterwards. So I'm just really basing it on yung mga yung mga broad characters chess. No, pero even then they evolved. Glenn was originally a torpe, shy boy, and then he became a family man who basically just reacts to the wife. Chompy was less aggressive now since they got married. They're acting as parents, and now their story is just me and my wife raising a child. That's good. That's a great storytelling if you can get. And then the rest, how these characters react when they meet a Filipino scenario, whether it's out of control virus or the pains of being single in your late 30s and your parents are pressuring you, society is pressuring you in general. Uh, yeah, And I'm sure if I try, I can look up my original friends from college. But I think I'd rather base it on whoever I meet nowadays.
All right. Okay. So just like you mentioned, Pugad Baboy has si Polgas, the dog. Beerkada has Psycho Cow.
Yes.
What was the what was the idea behind Psycho Cow? Like who inspired it? Who? I mean, because you have your yes the group of friends, diba? That you said were based on your college friends.
Um,
Who was the brainchild? Who inspired Psycho Cow?
uh, Benjamin Canapi. Wow, that was one of the friendships that really paid off decades later. It was 2003. I was releasing Trescada, the third book. And then I saw a fan who was, participating very eagerly in, if you remember this, LFE groups, or then back then it was called Yahoo groups, a community email service.
That I see.
So old. And his username struck me, Psycho Cow. Cows for Psycho. And I asked permission to use his character as an actual cow with others, a bull with others, with a mental
Yeah,
scenario going on. Very aggressive, based on the person himself. And the magic is, how many years later? 18 years later, Benjamin Canapi is still a gold mine for ideas, for comedy sketches, because now he followed the footsteps of Carlos Eldran and is doing very well, successfully in online, mga Manila, mga Manila tours,
Wonder Manila.
Wander Manila. And one post about virtual exploring Intramuros during Halloween became viral,
Yeah,
and
it just blew up.
it was invited by various television shows and newspapers as a feature. So I know that later, one of these days, I'm gonna uh, address the Psycho Cow. Will be a tour operator of Manila. And I'll just ask the original guy, and the guy is still looks at me favorably for turning into the Beerkada mascot. That's the magic of having a comic strip.
yeah.
Yeah, Bikanapi is also a comics creator if you're
He's a, he's a
he
lot of
does.
things. He's a director.
Yeah, he's a director, he's a tour guide, he's a renaissance man.
Oh,
Yeah, Renaissance man talaga. So yeah.
he's living a life. Ay, grabe. That's if you can say anything about him.
Yeah, he's also the teacher.
Oh man, he's a teacher, no?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm surprised. Actually, I was actually surprised that a lot of comics creators also. I guess the word isn't really sidelined so much as they do this at the same time as their careers. See Carlos
yeah.
Vergara. He's CSB, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, professor. So
most of the comics creators we have only do yung comics nila on the side. Unlike sina Lyndon, Paul, and Manix, those are yung upper echelon and something to look forward to if you are a comic creator. But most of the comics creators are actually in education or in art services, working for like agencies and other creative media outlets.
Si Doc Carlos San Juan is really that is
yeah,
sideline.
Oh, that is
He's a nuclear doctor. He's a nuclear doctor.
nuclear medicine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nuclear medicine.
Actually, he's also someone I kind of want to get on this podcast soon. But I'm sure. I mean, given the situation, he's
yeah.
probably busy as heck.
Yeah.
Okay, so Beerkada, it's on Philippine Star.
That's correct.
Beyond that, is there any future plans right now?
Netflix series though.
Yeah. Is there anything to look forward to for Beerkada?
As of this point, I think I'd rather focus on other projects and let Beerkada. I focused like 20 years of my life building up Beerkada. I think I should focus on other titles and projects, and then get back to Beerkada and applied all the learnings I've from these other projects.
Any that you can share right now, or still in the works?
Still in the works.
Still in the works. Okay, fair enough. Okay, Sir John. So codename Bathala. Oh, Sir Ariel is in the waiting room. All right. Sir John, will get back to you.
Okay.
Sige lang.
Ariel.
And we are joined right now with Sir Ariel Atienza.
He's shy.
I think he's here. Sir, muted po kayo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it.
Sige, anyway, while we're waiting for Sir Ariel to set up. Okay, so codename Bathala, can you give us a general background and description about it?
Okay, Codename Bathala was a high school project that I did. When you are in high school, you read a bunch of comics and then you think hey, I can do this. So I make Codename Bathala. Then I forgot about it for like 10 years or more. And then a movement by a certain group of creators in DeviantArt actually resurrected yung old high school project na yun. There was they were doing Filipino superhero cards. Somebody spearheaded that, and then comics creator / legend Gilbert Monsanto saw something in it that maybe we could do a shared universe type of comic book, which became Bayan Nights. So at first I wasn't part of it. Then I saw it, and of course, parang this looks fun. Which character would I use to join? So I dusted off yung old character ko from high school, which was an Iron Man rip-off, si Bathala. So basically that's where it started. But when I was with Bayan Nights, I decided na parang it's not enough parang to tell the story of Bathala. So I did a 4-issue run of Bathala, 2011 to 2014, I think. So the last issue of Bathala was released 2014. That's like 6 years ago. And after that, I haven't done anything else with Bathala. So that's Bathala. I have another project which is more longer running, and I'm still doing today, which is yung Digmaang Salinlahi.
I think that's the one you've been posting about recently, no, po, sir?
Yeah, it's the only thing that I've been posting quite regularly on, only because I get lots of cool artwork from other creators. I asked for some pin-ups, and then I got a lot of it. So I had a lot of stuff to post. It's basically a sword and sorcery fantasy type of story. Loosely, as in I say loosely based on Filipino epics. I say loosely based kasi baka may magbasa nun and say this is not yung ano, but it's just loosely based. So I got characters from various stories, and I interwove them into the story and stuff. But mostly it's hodgepodge na ng epics and fantasy stories and myths natin. So it's something like totally new, but there are elements that are familiar with some of our written stories.
Right. Okay. Mukhang nagsiset up pa si Sir Ariel. He's having some technical issues. It's fine. Okay. So, actually, one thing that I wanted to ask while with Sir Ariel here. So, ito. He has class, which is pretty much slice of life. The same with Sir Lyndon with Beerkada, which, slice of life, commentary, witty humor. What was it about? And then you decided superheroes. So did you not want to go the route of slice of life or talagang superhero talaga gusto mong gawin?
Oh, yeah. I don't have that close. I don't have that close knit friends that I can really draw on. I think I posted something like, yes, I do hang out with friends, but I'm not the type na yung would really yung hang out with friends if malabo parang so I don't really have that much of experience to draw on kasi when I was younger I'm more withdrawn. I don't really socialize that much. Even during high school and yung college stuff, I usually have a group, but if possible, I would rather stay at home.
Yeah. I can relate.
If you could get so if ever I'm gonna do a slice of life, it would be still fiction because it would be something that I just imagined or something. And to answer, I'm really not that. Like I said, Bathala was like 6 years ago. It was like just a short chunk of years that I did Bathala. It's still getting traction today only because of the artwork. The artwork is fantastic. No, but Bathala. I was very fortunate that Judd Abinuman was the one who illustrated Bathala. Same with my other project. I mean, I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate that I get to work with all these fantastic artists that gives life to yung mediocre stories ko. So, yeah.
All right. So, you have Digmaang Salinlahi right now. Are there any more plans to build off of that? And even like, let's
Yeah.
even
Digmaang
any
Salinlahi.
Sige. Sorry, go ahead.
Digmaang Salinlahi actually ended then during 2014. 2014 was yung end ng both ng series ko. Hi Ariel.
Hi Sir Ariel.
Yeah.
Hello.
But last year 2019 I started yung sequel ng Digmaang Salinlahi, which is yung mga huling awit ng Digmaan. And it's still ongoing. So that's still ongoing.
All right. Let's catch up with Sir Ariel. Sir Ariel, kumusta po kayo? How are you?
Okay naman. So far, so good naman. Di ako masyadong productive sa comics, but in other sa ibang work at saka sa okay naman.
Sige, sir. Okay. So, Sir Ariel, I'll just backtrack through my questions lang. I'll ask you, just to give a basic background about you. How did you start in comics? Sino po mga inspirations mo when it comes to art and comics?
Start professionally, I started comics noong grade 6. Siguro sa halo-halo mostly kasi mga binibili namin before yung mga available na reprints ng National Bookstore, mga DC Comics. Siguro di ko matanda kung merong Marvel before, pero yun, yung mga House of Horror, DC Comics, yun yung mga and then combined din ng love ko for the time na Saturday morning cartoons. Tinry ko, tsaka yung mga newspaper dailies. Tinry kong gumawa ng sarili kong comics na it's about actually parang parang similar sa Jurassic Park. It's about this yung very similar actually. It's about this yung rich na philanthropist na gusto mag-explore nung parang jungle na and meron siyang kasamang lawyer din na And dun sa saka secretary niya, babae. Ngayon, dun sa na-discover nila meron mga pygmy na dinosaurs. And along dun sa adventures nila, yung na-discover, meron silang naging karibal yung kapatid, yung evil na kapatid nung philanthropist. So, hanggang doon pa lang yung na-develop ko, hindi ko pa siya na-explore ko pa lang yung world na kung sino yung mga animal characters na pwedeng isama. And after nun, siguro college na, nung nag-start na akong gumawa ng comics, professional comics ko na 1993 nag-start. Na print siya sa Glitter magazine. And simula dire-diretso na 'yon. Influences ko dun sa before was mostly mga nababasa ko dun sila Nonoy Marcelo, sino ba gumawa nung Cesar Rosar. Mostly sa mga taga Manila Bulletin na daling yung diary namin before at saka Daily Globe. Later on sa Inquirer, at saka yung pangapat yung sa Philippine Star, siguro late 90s na. Tapos yun nga, yung mga mostly mga sitcoms yung yung influence to storytelling. Tinatry kong mostly character based yung mga stories. And yun yung yun yung ina-explore ko parang, or at least tinatry kong i-explore hanggang ngayon. Yun.
Great. Okay, sir. So, how have these inspirations mo, how have they been able to reflect in your work?
Naghalo-halo siya. Depende dun sa discovery ko nung mostly nung nag-start ako mag-comics, mostly siya, western yung mga like nung nag-start pala akong before pala ako yung sinabit ko pala for print na yung unang comics na sinabit ko for print was very very much influenced yung visuals nung yung style ng drawing ng Bloom County. So after nung mid-90s, nung sumikat na yung anime, actually, before pa sumikat ng anime dito na, yun nga, yung kuya ko kasi na may ties sa Japan, nagtatrabaho sa Japan noon. So, nagpapadala siya ng mga at saka yung sa mga college na classmates, mga pinag-uusapan noon, yung mga Ranma, ano pa ba yung mga early 90s na anime na So doon, nung pumasok yung lalo na yung sa Ranma, kay Rumiko Takahashi, saka ko in-incorporate yung mga expressions, yung mga exaggerated na expressions ng mga nila, reactions, dun sa for additional comic effect. Yun yung So, yun na. Pero ever since parang nahanap ko na naman yung style na so far wala pa akong may ina-incorporate visually, pero sa storytelling mostly ngayon yung mga nakikita kong comics sa webtoons, yun yung since regularly updated yung mga nandun so karamihan ng mga influences ko dun sa, or at least tinatry kong gumawa ng stories ngayon dun sa slice of life na sa mga webtoons galing. Yan.
Okay. All right. So, speaking of slice of life, I want to talk about yung class.
Yeah.
Pati I think Westside.
Westside.
Yeah. So, talk by all means, talk about them, please.
Okay. So class yung original, actually spin off siya dun sa yung original na sinabit ko comics for print noong 1993 sa Glitter magazine was about originally yung comics na ginawa ko was about kasi nung time yan usong-uso kasi yung mga sitcoms revolving around yung mga family. So yun yung una kong ginawang comic strips. Pero nung pinasok ko dun kinuha siya sa Glitter magazine, ko na why not i-focus ko na lang dun sa mga anak na teenage, ay, nag-iisang anak na teenager at saka yung mga kaibigan niyang mga klase niya ng high school. So, yun yung napansin kong market ng magazine na yun, mga teenagers hanggang early 20s. So, tinry ko, yun yung naging focus ko. Yung mga secondary characters, naging primary characters. So, lahat sila were based on mga classmates at saka barkada ko nung high school. Every one of them, kasi dalawang high school yung inattendan ko. So, yung una, puro all-boys school. Tapos yung pangalawa, co-ed. So, doon ko nakuha lahat ng mga characters na alam nila kung sino-sino sila doon. Pero karamihan sa kanila nag-move on na. Pero yung mga iba, natutuwa naman dahil sinabi nila sa akin nung in-inform ko sila by mail noon, snail mail, na tinago nila yung sulat na sinabi ko gagamit ko, papaalam ako kung pwede ko silang gamitin yung as characters dun sa comics plus yung sample ng mga gawa ko nun. So yun na yung ko. Tapos initially lahat ng mga nangyayari noon happen since 90s yun na nag-aaral pa ako nung sa school noon. So doon ko binase lahat ng mga ideas ko. Kung ano yung makuha ko mga nangyayari. And it's easier na maggumawa ng kasi ng stories dahil noon once a month lang yung labas ng comic strips. And then, nung gumanda yung circulation ng magazine, naging twice a month. So, yun, nag-run siya from 1993 hanggang year 2000. Then, around 2001, actually, nag-fold up na yung magazine after. 2001, pinasok ako 2002 pala, pinasok ako ng brother ko, nasa US siya noon. Pinasok niya ako dun sa isang Phil-Am na newspaper. Philippine News yung pangalan. So, sinabi niya, gawa daw ako ng bagong strip. Suggestion niya tungkol sa mga Phil-Ams na siguro ang suggestion niya tungkol sa mga Phil-Ams na tapos ako naman, since nandito naman ako sa Pilipinas, why not gawin ko yung nila na nag-relocate sila dito sa Philippines. So, ginamit ko yung 9/11 na event para mag-relocate sila dito. Tapos lumalabas din sa parang week. Ayun, mas madalas yung weekly yun. So, yung Westside is about yung family din. Single dad, tapos tatlong magkakapatid na mga anak niya. Tapos from their perspective, ano yung experiences nila ng yung pag-relocate sa Pilipinas na medyo biglaan. So yung mga culture shock nila, yung slangs, yung mga paano sila makikipag-relate sa mga local na mga tao. So yun yung yung mga pagkain. So yun yung sinusulat ko sa Grand siya hanggang around 2008. Then after that, I tried writing na lang for tuloy na lang sila online. Yung Pero as of now, hindi ko pa nadadagdagan yung strips. Maraming actually lumabas maraming nagawa na hindi pa na lumalabas dun sa dyaryo. Hindi lumabas dun sa dyaryo nun. So, hopefully matuloy ko siya ng kasi syempre since 2008 ang dami nang pinagbago. So, around that time pala, hindi pa pala masyadong developed. Around 2001 hanggang 2000, kailan ba na-develop yung Facebook, yung social media na-developed around 2004, So yun, so nung time na yun, nag-start yung strip was, medyo analog pa yung, nila yung background. Pero, yung time dito sa na to, hindi ko pa masyadong na-tie up yung digital aspect ng, ng buhay na, di ba, lahat sila nakatutok sa cellphones or something. Mas active sila sa social media kaysa sa totoong buhay. Yun, so ang daming mga ideas pa kaya hindi ko pa sila na-incorporate dun sa comics.
Okay. All right. Now to transition to his story. Actually, yung unique, what I find unique about it is that, ang dami ng mga themes na tackle. You have your superheroes, yung mga slice of life, mga comedy. You decided to do one about religion. Basically yung biblical scripture. So
Yeah.
what inspired you to do that?
Ah,
And diba, what was the motivation behind it?
yung original na idea doon kasi meron ng friend na nakilala ko from Pinoy Exchange, and he wanted to start yung a magazine that's a pop culture magazine, pero bridging yung gap between yung popular at saka yung siguro yung mga Christian na audiences. Gusto niya i-reach out yung Christian audiences. So nakagawa siya ng dalawang yung first magazine was si Kichi Nadal yung cover. So nakagawa ko ng mga dalawang full page na comics doon. And then dun yung starting point nung and isip ko nung tumigil yung magazine. Why not? Bakit hindi ko na lang ituloy yung in the same way na meron din sana akong gustong gawing project na hindi ko pa nagagawa eh. Na-inspire ako dun sa Philippine history ni sa angle ni Ambeto Campo. Na bakit hindi gawing interesting yung stories nung yung tawagin na lang natin yung hindi interesting, yung parang dead history nung gawin siyang relatable. Kasi yun yung nakuha ko doon kay Ambeto Campo na hindi naman siya kailangan maging memorize i-memorize yung mga kinalaman namin dun sa mga so ayaw ng mga tao pag-aralan o basahin yung mga bagay na yun. So iniisip ko na i-translate yung history and na nung time na yun na into one comics na ang difference na dun sa mga ibang comics din na cartoony siya, and pangalawa parang medyo may light yung approach nung So yun yung yung both ideas, both dun sa cover, gusto ko i-cover both history, well and also yung Bible history ng sa Gospels na we'll start with dun sa without hindi naman maging flippant or maging but to touch yung in a different way. Na parang yung katulad ng ginawa ng Flying House or kaya yung ano ba yung isang kasabay ng Flying House?
Superbook.
Ganun approach. Superbook, yun yung idea ko. Yun yung yun yung idea ko doon na ganung approach.
Okay. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulty. It happens. Anyway, all right. So now that we've covered that, sir, last question for you. Any specific future plans for your stories, or even just a future project that you can talk about?
Inaano ko ngayon is mostly gusto ko mag-focus muna dun sa class. Inaano ko muna kasi gusto ko mag-deviate dun sa before kasi ang approach ng comic strips is halimbawa yung sa akin is halimbawa 4 panels, may setup, merong and then pagdating sa huling panels kailangan merong punchline. Yun yung traditional na And nakikita ko dun sa mga bagong comics ngayon na hindi naman necessarily kailangan yung punchline is parang super nakakatawa talaga. It's just parang isarado mo lang yung kwento ng maayos. So yun yung pinag-aaralan ko from yung training ko na gumawa ng nakakatawang punchline, which sa ngayon mahirapan ako mag-isip ng punchline na. So inaano ko i-divide yung from comic book storytelling na balik ulit ako sa web comics. Ayan, pero ang plano ko doon is web comics, pero more on comic strips yung orientation pa rin. Na hindi siya limited lang sa yung space lang ng newspaper. Yun yung maganda doon. Yun ang maganda ngayon eh. Pwedeng kahit ilang panels yung gusto mong ikwento, just siguro basta doon sa pagdating doon sa whether to be continued or basta yun, maganda yung kailangan they would look forward dun sa susunod na So yun yung tinatry kong pinag-aaralan ko ngayon na mag-transition sa webcomics.
Okay. All right. So now I want to move to two topics about Komikon. So I mean, personally, Comic-Con's been basically a tradition of mine, diba, for like 9 years na. Would have been 10, but I mean, even the, but I digress. So just in case anyone watches this and asks, "What's Comic-Con?" So please talk about it.
Nobody's gonna talk about it.
John.
Okay, so Comic-Con is and first and foremost, Comic-Con is a venue for comic book creators to sell their comic book titles. That is yung first and foremost goal ng Comic-Con, was to provide a venue for comics creators to be showcased, to sell their merchandise, to sell their comics. That is Comic-Con. That's for local creators. Which is why I guess the name, yung full name ng event is it was first the annual Philippine Comics Convention. We always put emphasis on yung comics part.
Yun. Nag-start siya kasi yung idea for Comic-Con nag-start siya because yung mga previous conventions na nag-start ng 2000, 2001 have been parang focus siya is more on pop culture. Parang everything under one roof yung And habang tumatagal yung syempre mas binibigyan nila ng priority yung mga mas maraming buyers and everything. So yung mga comics, merchandise at saka sa mga cosplay yung eventually nagiging mas focus ng mga events. Comics na relegate sa may bandang sa isang gilid lang. So inisip namin, nakaka-attend namin we felt na we've been getting yung raw end ng deal palagi dun sa hindi kami nalalagay sa spotlight or anything. So iniisip na, kasi palaging nakukuha namin reaction dun sa it's parang may comics pala dito or di namin alam na dito pala yung mga nag-comics. So iniisip namin, one day na why not magtayo ng sariling event na ang focus lang talaga is selling yung comics. Walang kahit kundi comics lang talaga, pure comics sa selling. Yun yung initial idea. Tapos, ayun, doon nag-start lahat ng
Okay.
Lyndon, anything to
Sir
add?
Lyndon?
I have something to add. Comic-Con, K-O-M is the easiest name for an event na you can trademark. There we have received a number of emails na for other conventions, for other comics conventions that we receive because they think na we're responsible for all comics conventions. And we have to say na, sorry, no, we're not this comics convention. No, another province will have a comics convention and they will get their email for that because people assume or lumalabas siguro it comes out sa search engine where whether it's the name or yung activities for the past 15 16 years where the we have a great name for a comics convention. Very simple, very Filipino, trademarkable, and intuitive.
Okay. So eventually I will talk about the growth of Comic-Con. But that's for a later segment. So Comicon's been going on for about 15 years now. Cut to 2020, everything has to shut down. Obviously this has affected especially conventions. So describe how it's been like for Comic Con Inc. since basically the country just shut down.
Kasi John muna.
John would have a foremost thing to say. Go.
Well, totally nag-difference na naging iba yung mechanics for events. We did like 3 events online already. So what we can do is still link up with the other creators. So that's what we do. What we can still do is spotlight other creators, which is what we do. So that is why most of our online events are still following the old format of the Comic-Con panels. We spotlight artists, creators from comics. Tapos we also do discussions about certain aspects which are pertinent to comics, like going online, which we tackled sa last online Comic-Con namin, with yung new platforms that are available for creators which are locally based. Because let's be honest, even before naman lumabas yung dalawang platforms which are locally hosted, there are already options for our local creators. Mas globally pa nga eh. If you use those platforms, more global. But there are persons na nag-initiate na let's do something for local. So we introduced them to our Comic-Con audience. We also did a roundtable with our comic book creators to ask them how they are. Just yung simple gatherings na ganon. So yung actual commerce part ng Comic-Con, which is some of the creators are actually looking forward to, kasi you can actually sell a lot of comics in Comic-Con, which we pride ourselves in, kasi what else can you buy at Comic-Con? Only comics, di ba? So people who attend Comic-Con have one thing in mind to do when they go to Comic-Con, which is to buy comics, which is something good na pinapagpatuloy pa rin namin. So, yun nga, yung part na yun, medyo nawala. Kasi it's kind of hard doing it digitally. But we are pointing other people to the direction of those platforms or sites that offer online selling. Like Mervin Malonzo's Merv Store, or like even our the other event, Comiket have their store, which is Secret HQ. Shopee, there's a lot of creators at Shopee and Lazada. That has become a viable option for selling your comics. Even the Facebook Marketplace and the Carousel and the OLX, di ba? You could see the creators trying to find ways for yung commerce to continue. But on our side, maybe we can offer something like that, but at the moment, everything's still just in the planning stage pa lang. So what Comic-Con always does is, if somebody else is doing it, we point.
Yeah. So, yeah. Mostly, ganun lang talaga yung inaano na. Kasi bago pa lang yung lockdown na to. So, tinatry namin mag-adjust as much as possible dun sa in view of dun sa mga pinagbabawal na mga gathering. So, tinuloy namin yung mga guesting. So, feature namin sila online. So, at least yung hindi nila kailangan bumili ng ticket. They just have to log in and watch yung mga videos and watch yung mga interviews ng mga aside from that, yeah, yung siguro yung pinaka-next na pinaka-solid talaga dun yung katulad ng sinabi ni John yung online selling. Beyond that, everything's still in the air. Tingnan natin kung anong mangyayari sa next na or ano yung pinaka-viable na outlet next after ng mga yun.
Sir Lyndon?
Not really have nothing to add.
Okay. All right. So after all this, what does this say about the value of a physical, of conventions like Komikon, for yung mga independent artists and even like small businesses? Because when I would go to Komikon, sa entrance pa lang you have t-shirt printing, you have like companies that I guess either sponsor the event or they might have even applied for a slot, like a space to set up shop. And now that that's basically out of out of commission until further notice, what does this say about how important conventions are for for the individual, even for like the small, I guess, no, small league, I guess. I wouldn't say small league, but for lack of a better word.
Well, yun yung isang malaking aspect na nawala sa ating mga event sellers. Before the pandemic hit, hindi lang Comic-Con yung inaasahan nila eh. It's like every week there is a pop culture event happening. And actually it became a viable source of livelihood, yung event selling. I guess it's a malaking change for them since I don't see having an in real life event happening maybe up till the end of next year if we're fortunate. So like I said, most of them went online to sell their stuff. You could see a lot of sellers who used to be traditional sellers at events. They have now opened up yung mga Facebook pages to sell their stuff. So yun yung naging replacement for the events. I don't know how it will affect the actual events when the convention halls start opening their doors again. Pero as of now, people are finding ways to move their products. And it's fortunate that yung ating technology has catch up enough na you could buy a product online and you could have it within your in your hands within minutes or even an hour or even minutes nga eh, because of yung advent ng mga couriers natin, yung ating courier services natin. So that's something na would factor with our real life events. But that would happen only kapag nagsimula na nga magbukas ulit yung mga convention halls. So hindi natin alam yung lasting effects nitong pandemic and everybody closed in sa mga bahay nila.
Sirs, anything?
Anything to add?
Nothing? Okay. Cereal ata fruit na ano. Okay. So I guess I can move on now to some other questions. As people who've been doing this for a long time now, what do you think is the future of Filipino comics?
The Netflix of comics. I'll go first. I've been studying yung sa Korea, South Korea, and they have the webtoons, which is very popular over there. Millions of subscribers. A number of them have turned into other content formats like movies, television shows. Along with the gods. It's a very popular Korean movie based on a webtoon. And yeah, it's the format has to fit inside a phone. It has something of either four panels that you can read in one screen, or it can be scrolled up down. So that's what I'm still waiting for someone to introduce the technology here. Also, the Netflix of local comics, where you have a website that hosts. Yeah, I think that's already being happening now. But I'm thinking of the subscriber model that you pay every month, and then you have access to all these, and then you distribute yung fees and payments based on the number of people who visit your site. That's the immediate future of comics from what I'm seeing.
Hmm. No, as
Well,
of
yeah,
now,
yung
kaya,
Netflix thing,
John, uh,
uh, it would be more viable for creators that have a wider library of work. Kasi unless of course yung the site would impose deadlines and then would drop yung titles. Kasi for a subscriber, if you just have a finite library of works, why would you subscribe every monthly? So there has to be content being made at a regular pace. So yun yung something na kailangan baguhin sa culture. Most of yung creator culture natin ngayon are effectively tied to the events calendar. Or actually, wala naman kasing ang tawag dun, walang repercussions if you missed a deadline. Walang repercussions if you don't put out work. Pero for that kind of system to work, like a Netflix for comics, there's gonna be a paradigm shift nung creator culture because everybody has to produce content regularly. Which is not a problem for like sina Lyndon and Mannix and the other comic strip creators because they already have that culture since they are dailies. But for the others, it would be it would be a totally different as in parang um, like I said, most of our creators are doing comics in their spare time. So pag may ganong system and they want to be part of that system, how would you now allot yung time to create content regularly?
Okay. So si Serial's having internet issues.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be back. Okay. So we've actually it's funny that you brought up Trece. Now that it's pretty much exploded, it's known it's known internationally and it has a Netflix series on the way. What do you think is the next, or who do you predict is the next in line for that spotlight? Now that Trece is big, who do you see that could possibly be the next Trece for the?
Well, I'm seeing, Arnold Ari has a body of work that is waiting to be discovered in another format. He's explored several subgenres under the fantasy element: romance, action, world building, high fantasy, uh, reverse isekai, where the fantasy creatures visit the real world. So yeah, that's my prediction.
Okay, Pastor John.
Sorry, what was the question?
Now that Tres has become pretty much known worldwide, who do you think is the next project or the next? Who do you see as being the next to rise up? I guess.
Well, like I said, you need a library of work to be considered for something like that. Trece has a like 4 books, 5? How many ba yun? 7? 7 books already out. Somebody that has that wide library that content can be derived from to cross platforms. So if it's just somebody who did a wonderful comic book, but it's only one story, how can you continue that? So somebody na may ganong wide na nagawa na library would be next in line. That's my take on that. So sino nga ba ang meron? I can take a look at yung what do you call this? Young adult writers natin. Yung Janus Silang ni Mr. Edgar Samar would be one. Si Tabi po could also be one. Tabi po is actually already cross-platforms into TV, diba? They did a live action that somebody who has finished something then from the Visprint group. Maybe shorts from Manix could also be done. Diba? You could do short like the ones that they do in Cartoon Network, like short 5 minute clips of things, and that can be compiled. Pugad Baboy is actually also one. Pugad Baboy has a very, very deep library.
30.
Yeah.
Plus.
Magta 32 na, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yun yung nakikita ko. If there are other producers looking for more content from us, those creators would be yung kanilang dapat tingnan. Also Lyndon has a deep library as well.
Okay. So actually there's a particular question that I would like to know answers to, really. So Filipino comics has to basically compete with Marvel and DC, diba? Western comics, not just Marvel and DC, even like English media, Japanese manga, and I think Chinese manhwa. I think it has its place.
Korean manhwa.
Yeah. So what is it about Filipino comics that makes it unique or different to the point na it's recognized internationally, right? By whether it's Will Eisner or Netflix. Well, what makes Filipino comics unique, in your opinions?
Filipino comics being unique. Are modern comics, or are you talking about our rich Filipino comics history?
I'm more talking in general context.
Well, kasi if you're talking about being recognized, a lot of our illustrators are recognized worldwide. Not just now, but even before 1950s, 1940s, 1960s,
Yes.
70s. Because they are very great illustrators. We have that talent na recognized worldwide. Hindi lang siya technical proficiency eh. Kasi a lot of them are great storytellers. That's why if you said Eisner recognized them. And Eisner doesn't look just on yung technical aspects ng drawing. He looks at yung storytelling abilities. And most of our masters during the golden age ng comics natin were great at that. So, kung recognize man yung comics natin, it's probably because of those who paved yung way before. Lyndon?
Speaking of uniqueness, well, we have among Southeast Asia, we have a substantial subculture of comics going back decades. We can easily draw from. If you want to speak about, among the other conventions, Komikon compared to the other conventions, Komikon's the only one with a substantial history back to it. With ToyCon, we don't really have a toy, culture that we can call our own. With with yung cosplay, they have to get the ideas from some other countries and other cultures. Pero Comic-Con is blessed, and the comics community in general is blessed with a vast talent pool today, as well as yung mga veterans from yesteryears. And even yung mga success ng 13 is derived from decades of storytelling and centuries of history and culture and stories that he's just interpreting for today's audience.
Okay. So it's more like a naturally gifted talent, ganun po, you would say.
Among other
Yeah.
things, there's the talent mixed with the history,
Yeah.
a substantial history and culture to it. Sure.
Yeah, also yung culture kasi natin is kind of weird since we are a Asian country but we are more Western than most.
Yeah, that was actually something that doing research also about that I noticed where Filipino comic creators would generally take reference from whether it's local or Western factors or elements, and then sort of spin it into their own thing. No,
Yeah.
I think I really do think that's kind of interesting. Okay, so from here I'll share my screen, and I'm gonna show a series of photos, and generally once I show them, the floor is yours to uh talk about these sort of your thoughts behind yung itong mga what I'll be showing.
Okay.
So there we go. So first off,
The later cover of my first book, Berlenyo.
yep.
Was this done by Ryan?
That's Ryan Orozco's work.
Actually, sir, what I've noticed about this, sir, is yung evolution ng style mo. It's not just the stories and the characters that have grown. It was also your style. So from yung especially yung the way you drew the eyes, diba? Yung, eventually it turned to a more, I guess, as far as realistic can go, it turned into a more realistic style. So
There's comedy that you can do with just the expression and the gestures, and having just the uni eye is very limiting with the in terms of expression. So I decided, to expand. Give them a nose that they can wrinkle. Give them two eyes and eyebrows that the brows can furrow. So that you can say a lot of details in just one art. So that's the reason why I did that.
all right. So next
I
one.
find, di ba, Lyndon, when you changed yung style mo, there were parang mga nagre-reklamo na bakit binago mo yung style mo.
No, not really reklamo. Mababait pa yung mga pero they miss the old style.
Eh, nag-survey ka before.
Parang yun yung panahon pa ng mga mailing list.
The big lesson I learned there is you have to give a reason why the bagay style in story and outside the story. Yung most recent introduction ko for that, ginawa kong yung story ng yung nagano sila si Chompy, Crisis Kada, yung events ng Crisis Kada, where Chompy broke the walls of reality, and then they started exploring different art styles and different story genres. And in the end, they became two eyes. And doon yata nagsimula yung nag-separate mga mata nila eh. There's the in story na because she broke reality, they came back with separate eyes na and more realistic features because of it.
All right, that's great. Okay, so itong next photo, ito. So, if I remember correctly, this was more of like yung mga artists and writers that pretty much grew up from Comic-Con, right?
Yeah, most of yung mga creators which we feature dito sa Sulyap are the creators that join yung activities ng Comic-Con. These are yung members na hindi Tiangge, joined yung Komikon contests. Also yung mga making noise na from yung usual crowd. Yung sa indie Tiangge nga. So
Actually,
yun nga, we give them a platform. Kasi we do outside shows then, we just don't do our own event, di ba? We join other events. And also outside, not just in the Philippines, also outside the country. While Comic-Con would like to bring all of them uh, sa outside, we do not have the funds to do that. But we do have a chance para i-showcase sila for we go to a event in Singapore with these books. We can showcase that these are the kind of talent that you can find in our event. So that's part of it. And also, yun nga, we want to spotlight those who are doing yung grind work of doing comics, which is why sila yung mga napili na mga creators.
okay. Next is ito po, Strife.
That's yung Digmaang Salinlahi. I just translated it to English.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Tapos, ito po. So, actually, what I noticed is yung title is Ang Mga Huling Awit ng Digmaan.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a sort of like an, I guess for lack of a better word, like an end game scenario.
Yeah. When I finished kasi Digmaang Salinlahi in 2014, it was on a cliffhanger. Tapos I did not touch it and I did not want to touch it anymore. Tapos somebody asked me, may ending ba itong kwento na to? So I fished out yung old scripts ko and started to tell yung end ng story, which I started last year, 2019. Supposed to be, meron akong 3 chapters na lalabas this year, which did not happen because of things that happened. So yeah, this will be the ending of Digmaang Salinlahi.
All right. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk more about Comic-Con. Just how it grew. So, ito. Particularly the venue. So it's Bahay ng Alumni. Was it difficult looking for a venue, and what were the I won't really ask you to go into the finer details, but looking for a venue to host the very first Comic-Con, what was that like?
Well, yung story nito has been told a lot of times now. Like I said, we were part of the group of artists then before. Tapos we do other pop culture events. One of the events that we attended was organized by a UP student org, UP AME. And they held it sa Bahay ng Alumni. From there, we got the idea na we were already thinking and we were already discussing bakit walang event for comics. Synergy na lang na we found yung venue sa Bahay ng Alumni, which was being used by yung student org at that time. And then we just decided na we'll do an event. And to push us to do the event, we we foolishly booked the venue kaagad in advance without any plans. So that's how we got into Bahay ng Alumni. Lyndon was the one who reserved that.
Yeah. I'm an alumni. I think I got points for reserving as an alumni. But few choices for venues. Back then in 2005, I think the options were hotels, which is expensive. Yung relatively new hall.
Megatrade.
Megatrade Hall. That's only hall in Metro Manila at the time. Later pa yung mga SM.
Wala pa SMX noon.
SMX,
Yeah.
wala pa. So yeah, that seems obvious. It's in the middle of a student population.
Having a captive audience is a plus. Kasi
Easy.
you are in the middle of a university.
Yeah, easy transportation, UP Ikot, yung mga UP Jeeps. So yeah.
Well, ang con niya is parang since you are in a university, other students from other school might be turned off to go. Pero yun nga, you have to you already have the UP community. So you could build on that na.
A number of the creators are from UP. So they
Yeah.
could just easily ask yung mga orgs nila and yung mga followers nila to attend.
Oh yeah,
Later on,
tapos since the first Komikon, we always partnered with a UP comics related org, di ba?
Yeah.
That's what Komikon has always partnered with a student org.
Okay. Ito po. Actually interesting may live performance pa, no? So
you want to talk about why there's no live performance anymore, Linda?
okay. As I understand, ako personally, it's always noisy. It's too loud. You can't say that I'm an old man. That's why I keep hearing loud music. I was young then, and it was still too loud. I can't talk to my customers about yung mga details if there's a loud, compared to all the other conventions and events. The cosplay insists on having a band playing out with their anime theme music. Komikon is proud about yung mga performances nila. Pero yung nga, if I wanted to have a convention for comics, it's gonna be not that loud. No live performances.
Or we could have a better venue where we could hold those other stuff somewhere else from the trade hall. But since we are limited nga to our venue with having only a single event hall, since ang purpose talaga ng Comic-Con is to sell comics, we decided na we would limit yung loud live performances.
At the end of the event, or maybe
either at the end of the event or at the beginning of the event, or because remember we did yung musical sampler ni Carlo Vergara at the start of our event, diba? Yung Sasha, not only that, the other one, kung paano ka naging leading lady.
Oh yeah, no. And any live performance has to be connected with comics.
Yes.
Fans of comics or fans of Comic-Con.
Yeah. And if you would notice, most of yung bands here, most of them have comic creator members. Like Kiko Machine, 3 of them are comic book creators. JP Kison, which is also a great artist. Si Manix Sabrera and si Spider Dan Jeromo.
Nice.
Yung the other band features yung artist ko sa Digmaang Salinlahi, si Keso.
Nice. Okay. So the next two, ito po. So I think in a span of 2 years, you had si Paul Medina Jr. and si Sir Jerry. I guess their first time, being part of Comic-Con. So I want to know, to have, pretty much 2 legends of the industry support support Comic-Con, which is a passion project. So to have that kind of support, that kind of endorsement, basically, that Sir Paul and Sir Jerry were like, this is something that we want to be a part of. What was that like?
Well, to begin with, si Sir Jerry had been with us since the first Comic-Con. And is one of yung siguro masasabi nating factors why other creators joined then, because we had Sir Jerry from the very beginning support us.
Yeah.
He took 2 tables nung first Comic-Con, even kahit wala siyang i-release na book. He was just there to support us. So that was a big thing for us. Si Sir Paul naman, Sir Paul was an acquaintance because of yung Citricon, di ba, Lyndon?
Yeah.
Lyndon. And also, I was a staffer back then sa Culture Crash. Then we went to their house. Tapos parang serendipity lang. We were looking for a way to contact Paul, but Paul doesn't answer to anybody. So pag kahit email mo siya, hindi siya sumasagot. What happened was, me and my wife, si Sherry, which is also founder and organizer of Komikon, we were in Trinoma and Sir Paul was having a book signing sa Power Books. Tapos, we said hi, and fortunately, naalala pa ako ni Sir Paul from my Culture Crash days. And we already had a schedule for the third Comic-Con. Tapos we invited him there and then. And he accepted there and then. So that was how we got si Sir Paul to join Comic-Con. I'm pretty sure na having Sir Paul and having Sir Jerry support the event would influence other creators to join the event as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, ito po, speaking of si Ma'am Sherry. So, pretty much the coming together in the establishment, pretty much, having Comic-Con Inc. registered officially, diba, as an tried and true official organization. Please, by all means, discuss it.
Well, it's partially because of the move from Bahay ng Alumni to other venues. Because from sa Bahay ng Alumni, as a loose faction of artists, we could always rely on partnering with a student org and have it presented as a student organization event. If you are gonna move out of yung academic setting nun, you would have to have business permits from the city. And to have business permits from the city, you have to have an actual business entity that they would give the permits to. Which is why the Comic-Con Inc. decided to formalize yung group. This was done 2009, and in 2009, we held yung Comic-Con, yung first Comic-Con and last Comic-Con sa Mega Trade Hall. And also, these are the only 6 organizers of Comic-Con. Kasi we've been hearing a lot of other people telling other people that they're organizers or affiliated with Comic-Con. But yeah, these are the only 6 persons who organizes Comic-Con from 2005 up to now. Only 6 pala. 6 kami. 6.
I'm not sure if Sir Ariel can hear me. Sir, do you have any thoughts about this?
Actually, yun yung buong kwento bakit parang late 4 years after namin na ni-register lang yung well, it's because we had to transfer din ng venue dahil lumalaki na rin yung nagkukulang na rin yung space for exhibitors at saka sa mga attendees. So, naisip ko na it was time na talaga. Yan.
Bahay na Alumni is hot, dude. Kung yun yung first na Comic-Con mo, there were people getting a heat stroke there.
Yun din. So, kailangan namin lumipat ng aircon na...
Okay. So, speaking of moving venues, so started at UP Bahay ng Alumni, eventually Mega Trade, and now, technically, 2011, Bayanihan Center. Personally, on another personal note, this summer Comic-Con Bayanihan was my first Comic-Con that I've been to. So, being able to finally move to an actual convention center and pretty much just pack the room, I think. I think you guys even also were also able to fill up the conference rooms, right?
Not in 2011.
Not 2011.
That
Okay.
started around 2014 ata, 2013. But when we moved sa Bayanihan Center, yun nga, immediate yung effect kasi it's an air-conditioned place with great restrooms. The restrooms. So parang na-legitimized yung Komikon. Parang we finally have a home to call our own since we were the first pop culture event that held the event there. You could credit si Ariel. Ariel was the one who found this place.
Sir Ariel, may masabi ka ba dyan?
Brother ko actually nakakita nun. And ito pala, yung initial reactions ng mga tao nung in-announce namin sa Bayanihan Center gaganapin. Kasi pag convention sanay sila sa mega trade hall. So there were initial nagdadalawang isip sila kung kaya ba nila pumunta ng Bayanihan Center noong una. But surprise na actually talagang pinromote namin yung mapa kung saan mahanap yung Bayanihan Center. Pinakita namin na kung gaano kadaling pumunta doon, ang daming ways na pwedeng pumunta. Yung mga iba doon, kung ayaw nyo maglakad, meron mga ways na pwedeng mag-commute. And you could drop off mismo doon be dropped off doon sa harap ng Bayanihan Center. Also, yung din doon, ang maganda din doon kasi, madaling pumunta, madali ring makahanap ng sakayan pa uwi. Also, since kaharap niya yung Pioneer Center, malaking advantage din na hindi rin mahirapan maghanap ng makakainan yung mga attendees kung gusto nila. Whereas before, paglabas ng convention area, di ba, maghanap pa sila, maglalakad
Punta pa silang Pilcoa.
Oo. Doon ba? Okay, sa shopping center sila pupunta.
Ang maganda sa Bayanihan Center, controlled mo yung exit and entrance.
Yeah.
Doon sa bahay ng alumni, kailangan permanently open yung mga gates. You cannot shut it down, so you cannot control. So anyone from outside can just sneak at the back, mag-crawl around. You can't really lock it. Pero doon sa you can finally establish yung mga control point.
Yeah, and it's also more secure since you have control of the entrance and exits. You could place security there.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one, ito po.
This one was yung 2012 was a zeitgeist na lang. Parang nag-align lang yung stars namin. A major production decided to launch their comic book adaptation at their major film feature sa event, and they brought in yung mga artista nila. National Bookstore won yung Mark Millar's contest for ordering the most super crooks, and they would Mark Millar held a contest for retailers that kung sino man yung makapag-order ng pinakamaraming super crooks, he would do a signing with them.
Yeah. Was his intention ba yung mga individual comic book stores sa Amerika?
I'm not sure, pero National Bookstore had him flown in, and up till now they're giving away super crooks. So you can imagine how many super crooks they have. And I guess Mark Millar, National Bookstore has been a sponsor of Komikon of sorts for how many years now? Parang at least a decade. At least a decade? Maybe.
Since Bayanihan?
Yeah, so yeah, maybe almost a decade. And National Bookstore, I do not know the story, but they were gracious enough to bring in Mark Millar. They did not have to. They did. But they did. It was unannounced.
Yeah.
It was unannounced. Mark Millar went to the event with the entire Super Crooks crew, including Indonesian colorist Sonigo, and of course our local rock stars of comics, Jerry Langilan and Linil Yu. So, and ayun nga, nagsabay lang. Tapos we also had Lovi Po and Ding Dong Dantes of Tik Tik. there. So it was probably the most star-studded Comic-Con ever. Pero yun nga, it was not planned. We hindi siya yung pinush namin na mangyari. It just happened.
Actually, by all means, please expound on that. You have pretty much an international team. You have Mark Millar, Sonny Go. They technically had no reason to be there, but they wanted to be there. Diba?
Yeah,
Comic-Con
because-
was at the point where you could attract international audiences.
No,
Pretty
no.
much.
What happened was Mark Millar was here during that time, and it just so happened that Comic-Con was on that weekend. And
swerte lang po. So sort of
swerte lang. I
destiny.
mean, if you are a comic book creator, you visit a country, then you hear some, we have a comic book event happening before your event. Maybe you would be, what do you call this? Interested to find out what's happening in the local scene.
Yeah.
I guess that's
Talent.
what happened. Also, National Bookstore used that event to promote their signing event, which was on Sunday. Glorieta 5. They just opened a big National Bookstore branch there during that time. So yeah, yun nga. It's just like I said, it was just sight, guys. Parang nag-align lang talaga yung stars namin, and it happened that way. One thing that we got from a good feedback that we got from Sonny Go was he was amazed that our event was fully comic centric, because you have pop culture events which calls themselves Komikons or conventions, comic conventions, but when you go there, it's more of like a pop culture festival,
Parang
not
Asia
just
Pop.
not just comics. You have other stuff. Pero yun nga, since we are a more or less a do-it-yourself convention nga, and mostly puro comics nga yung makikita nyo during that time, na-amaze siya na you can hold pala an event na ganun lang.
Actually, that's sort of an interesting thing I've noticed. Na, especially when it comes to like the Western conventions, like San Diego and New York, where they'll say they're a Comic Con, but at this point they pretty much lost the point, or not lost the point, but like comics are not really the focus anymore. It's more the movies, right? Itong mga upcoming Marvel series,
TV shows.
yeah, the TV shows, games, where comics were pretty much just pushed to the side, despite being in the name. And I think that really is something to be admired. Na talaga na no matter despite the 15 years of being in operation, you guys never lost the plot.
Oh, yeah.
Which
So,
one?
Well, I came from a time na comics was on a downturn, and it was zombie. It was on its last legs, and the big publishers have abandoned mga comics. Publishing is no longer there. But I always felt that na if anyone was gonna take care of comics, the industry, the community, it was gonna be comics people,
yeah.
yung mga creators, and they would understand. They have the most to lose if the industry goes south.
Yung talaga po for comics by comics. That really is something that I've really admired. Okay, so speaking of international travel, right? I love these segues. So actually, you eventually are able to pretty much bring Comic Con beyond the borders of the Philippines. I think you've been able to bring it to Baguio and I think Iloilo.
We did use Comic-Con Baguio as an official Comic-Con sponsored event. Icon, which was the Iloilo event, we were invited, right? It is a event by spearheaded by John Galino, and it's spearheaded by local comic book organizers.
Okay, so from that, you're eventually, I think, probably invited. I think it's by invite, right? You're invited to conventions abroad. So let's talk about them. First is Singapore and then Jakarta.
Okay, so Singapore was how can I say this? Yung first Singapore namin was alignment din ng stars, right? Singapore deemed Komikon to be on par with them and gave us a great booth.
Uh,
In exchange, we flew in Sir Jerry Alangilan as a special guest for the Singaporean comic book crowd.
Actually, how was the reception for, I mean, these are, you're not, these are comics basically from another country that have nothing to do with Marvel, DC. So what was
Our
the
comics.
reception like? Were you guys? Were you guys? Was the reception good? Yeah.
Well, what you can expect from Singapore is there's a big community of Filipinos there.
So talaga
So,
pong homegrown yung home crowd talaga.
we had people who were buying at our booth to be for me local Filipinos there. Though I did have some sales from other nationalities. What's funny was they did not know that Jerry Alangilan as a comic book creator. A lot of people were passing by our booth because Jerry Alangilan was this was the time during the YouTube infamy of Jerry yung Hey Baby Smile.
Yeah.
And they did not realize that he was the one who was inking Linil Yu. So yeah, just a funny anecdote. And then
Nice.
when they found out, I mean, I guess Sir Jerry sold a lot of yung mga ink works na during that time.
yeah.
Ito po, Jakarta.
Lyndon, you were the one who were.
Yeah, it's an exploratory activity for Comic-Con to check out yung mga mga counterparts sa Jakarta. It was the PopCon Asia 2015. They were celebrating yung mga contents, some games, comics din. We have a booth, and then we met yung mga we interacted with yung mga organizers, and we found out a lot of good things na yung mga organizers in Jakarta have a library of comics, and they support it by hosting yung mga activities, yung mga educational activities, seminars, workshops for interested parties. So that's how they do it, and we can still apply that idea in the Philippines.
Kaya pa, Ariel, were you a part of this?
Hindi. Dalawa lang sila pumunta.
Okay.
Uh,
Representing na po talaga, no?
Yung sa Singapore, lahat kami pumunta ng
Yeah.
Singapore.
Ito, Sir Lyndon, the reception in Jakarta, how was it?
There was a language barrier with the comics. Maybe you could release it in English. That would be much better.
Okay.
Ayun din pala, gusto ko palang i-add dun sa I na-realize ko dun sa yung language dun sa binanggit ni Lyndon na language barrier. A lot of yung sa visuals ng Filipino comics, daming actually natutuwa. But I discovered dun sa Singapore na they would have bought yung comics, pero yung common reaction nila is hindi raw nila maintindihan yung salita. So maraming so sana sana din kung ilalagay nila as webcomics yung so I hope na they would translate it into English then kung for yung mga international audience. Kasi sayang maraming natutuwa sa Filipino comics. But hindi lang nila maintindihan. Actually sa Jakarta, yung may mga inuwi din sila mga samples ng comics. And sayang lang din kasi hindi rin namin maintindihan yung salita ng Pero yung visuals were
Oh yeah.
yung illustrations na sobrang galing. Galing talaga.
Yeah. I'm actually doing international conventions like Singapore and dito sa Jakarta. what what lessons were you able to learn as artists, as comics creators, even as a organizing convention organizers. There we go.
Okay, one thing na natutunan ko, which we actually took to heart, is yun nga, we need to focus on yung local community of creators natin. Diba? It's sad, pero yun nga, if you turn your event into a more media spectacle, a pop culture festival, it would not translate sales for your comic book creator exhibitors. Which is why for 15 years, Komikon has been bare bones a trade show, because we want the community, especially our comic book creator exhibitors, to be able to sell their wares. I'm sure APCC actually did a good job with yung with having the local creator community as well. But we do not have the advantage of having 3 huge halls to separate all those activities together. So, yun nga, we have compromises na if we are going to continue it, kailangan kasama yung community, kasama yung creators. First and foremost, yun pa rin yung priority namin, to have the creators be able to sell their local comics and to produce local comics. So yun yung yun yung learnings ko dun sa pagpunta ko ng Singapore, because we hear a lot of horror stories na the community does not want to attend their convention anymore because it's too expensive. It's not that yung ROI nila does not meet yung rent nila and other stuff like that. Parang, di ba ang sad na yung comics convention would alienate the comics creators?
Actually, speaking of Asia Pop, one thing that I noticed is that Asia Pop was very much like yung mga international festivals, where it would say Comic-Con, but the minute you walk in, it was Netflix.
Yeah.
It was yung Magic the Gathering. I think at one point
Pinoy
it was
wrestling.
Philippine wrestling. Yeah, which not to, obviously this is not a dig at those organizations, but I mean the focus still needs to be on comics, diba? Kasi Comic-Con, diba?
Well, in fairness to Asia Pop, the first 2 years, medyo I wasn't that happy with the creator circle that they call, but eventually, because of the creators then that were annually joining, participating, promoting the event, it also became an event for those who are looking for local content. But that was on the 3rd year na. And then I don't know what happened. They did not do the 4th year. And of course, this year hindi na rin nangyari dahil sa event na nitong pandemic. Pero they were on the right track. The spectacle of the other media are attracting people who are looking also for local content, which was good. So they were on the right track on that aspect.
Okay. Fair enough.
Kaso yun nga lang, it's very expensive to exhibit sa APCC.
Yeah. Could only imagine. Okay, ito po. So going back to local, itong having kamikaze there.
Okay.
Si Boards of Evil Genius was a shirt sponsor. Shirt sponsor yung Evil Genius, di ba? And he was a member of Kamikaze.
Yeah.
I I wasn't there. I wasn't here. So nag they volunteered to do a few sets. 2 sets lang ba?
Yeah, oh,
It
three.
was it
Sa
unplanned? It
afternoon
was
event
unplanned,
eh.
no?
Di na yata namin announce. Tama
Yeah, it
ba?
was
Hindi namin announce.
unannounced and yeah, if you could see yung
Para lang
poster,
dun sa mga
meron dong ano,
parang surprise pa lang.
may nakalagay special surprise.
Ah,
Impromptu talaga na gusto po nila.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's interesting. Uh, okay. Ito po, Indicat. I'm jumping. I know I'm jumping a few years, pero ano. Because I actually did say this to Sir John. If we did every single one, I'm sure we'd be here for hours. So
Yeah.
sort of speeding this along. So Indicat. I mean, generally, well, I say generally, but how is this any different from Comic-Con? Really?
Indicat is you know that we hold an Indie Tiangge, di ba?
Yes.
Indie Tiangge is a selling spot at a specific area of the event area of the event hall where creators can opt to get yung selling spot without prior walang bayad, di ba? They don't pay outright. They would pay 10%, 5% of their sales after the event. Pero not exactly at after na event at a specific time, mga 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, we collect the 10%. So anything you sell beyond 5 o'clock sa inyo na yun. Indicat is a bigger version of that. There was a point kasi during yung early years ng Comic-Con that there was a lot of indie creators who were joining the Indie Tiangge. And we could not accommodate all of them. So naisip namin, why don't we? This is a more extreme version of Comic-Con because Comic-Con, Grande and Summer, they have corporate sponsors. We have National Bookstore.
ABS-CBN.
We have online games. We have TV stations and other retailers. And Indicat don't have those corporate sponsors. Indicat is sponsored by Comic-Con. And the selling slots are using the same mechanics of the Indie Tiangge. You could get a table, you could get a slot for selling with no outright payment except for your day pass, which is your ID. And you only have to pay 10% of your sales at 5 o'clock at a certain time period. So that's the main difference of Indicat and Comic-Con. Which is why if we have like new creators who want to try the Comic-Con experience, we would point them into the direction of Indicat. Maybe you could try this because you don't need to invest money for your own table. You just need to invest on your merchandise, on your comic book. Strictly speaking, Indicat is for indie creators, indie comics creators. So we've been accused of discrimination for yung merchandise sellers. Pero we did Indicat specifically for comic creators kasi. And if we open it to more merchandise, parang we lose yung initial goal ng event. Yun. So, to everybody, hindi naman kami nagdi-discriminate between yung mga sellers ng merchandise and comics. We do have specific areas for Comic-Con and Summer Comic-Con for those sellers. Pero Indicat, we wanted it to be purely comic book creators.
Okay. All right. So, Sir Ariel, you have any
Wala naman ako. Yun na yung basically. Yun
Okay.
yung
Indicat is good training for yung mga baguhan to before they jump into the shark-infested waters of Summer Comic Con and Komikon Grande. It's
Okay.
good practice. They could hone their skills.
Mm.
They could practice their marketing, production. They have leeway in order to perform. Whereas when they by the time they attend to Grande, they have to compete with yung mga veterans na, yung mga experts na, yung mga non-comics creators.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good way to hone your skills for the bigger events. And we're proud to host Indicate.
Actually, we also hold workshops, comic book workshops, comic book production workshops. And what we do is we synchronize the schedule that after the workshop, it would be Indicate. So that
parang yan po yung main event po nila.
So that our students from yung comic book workshop namin would apply what they learn kagad dun sa Indicate.
All right. Okay, so jumping 4 years to the ito. The last convention. Yeah. Okay, and it's kind of, I wouldn't say ironic, pero it's sort of paying homage to the pretty much the pioneers of the industry, diba? And there's kind of something when you kind of look at it, there's something poetic about it. If giving homage to the past ended up being technically the last Comic-Con for the foreseeable future. So putting this all together, what was this like?
Okay, so yung legend, it was high time na we do a legacy event. We've been doing it for 13 years, no? 13 years during this time. And we haven't really done a legend-centric event. Not because we don't want to, but because we do not have yung contact numbers so ng mga creators, and medyo yun nga, may nagkakaroon kasi ng misunderstanding na we only do yung modern comics, but we would love everyone to be included sa Comic-Con. So yun nga, we had the opportunity, since we had finally gotten yung contact numbers of Sir Hal, Sir Rico. Sir Ronnie was my wife's boss for a couple of years na. Sir Jess was of course the father of Manix and have attended a couple of Comic-Cons already. So we did the mix of the cartoonists and the comic book creators, and yun nga, that's how the legendary Comic-Con Grande 2019 came about.
Actually, speaking of Sir Jess, if I can find it, I remember walking through the convention hall, and I was able to get a photo of Sir Toto Madayag talking with Sir Jess. And I don't know, for me that's kind of a testament talaga na Filipino comics really takes care of each other, diba?
That was a fun part ng 2019 Comic-Con Grande. You would see our legends go around the floor and interact with the younger creators.
Yeah.
So that was really fun.
Ikaw po, Sir Ariel, as this being Comic-Con president, having these legends around, basically, immersing themselves in the event. What was this like for you, seeing pretty much 15 years of work come to this?
Actually, ang laking privilege nun. Kasi karamihan din sa mga yon, yung maliban kay Sir Ronnie, I grew up lumaki ako sa works ni Sir Ronnie. Tapos si Sir Jess was nag-start yung Inquirer, nandun na rin siya. Actually, nag-apply rin, una ko siya na-meet na nag-apply ako sa Inquirer. Yung Inquirer was yung second newspaper na nilapitan ko noon. Yung first, yung yung Globe. Tapos yung Inquirer. Yung, si Sir Jess, siya yung nagbigay siya yung talaga nag-entertain sa akin. Maraming binigay na advice sa akin sa pagko-comics noon. So, parang full circle na yun. Tapos si Hal Santiago minentor niya yung isang kababata ko rin kaibigan, si Rino Manikis.
Si Rino, si Rino.
Nag-training siya kay Hal Santiago nung bago niya gawin nung ginagawa niya yung maskarado. Tapos si Sir Rico Ribal, yun, Sir Rico Ribal medyo semi-regular din sa pero nandun siya para mag-sketch and siguro 1 or 2 times na ginest namin siya sa workshop and kinuwento niya yung paano siya nag-umpisa, ano yung mga techniques niya sa pag-drawing, parang nagkaroon ng question and answer. So, para sa yung nag-guest namin sila successfully and finally magkakasama sila 4 dito sa dun sa event na yon. And for people to come by and tapos parang makipag-usap sa kanila. Parang ang laking parang nag-full circle. Parang ito yung reason kung bakit namin ginawa yung para to pay homage dun sa veterans. So, kasi lahat, 'di ba? Halos lahat ng mga nagko-comics nag-start somewhere and para doon sa mga mas lumang mga nagko-comics na nag-start ng 90s. Lumaki doon sa mga local comics na talaga. So ito yung mga familiar na names and for most of them na-establish na rin yung names nila sa bagong market. Tapos alam mo, katulad dito yung picture ni Toto na kausap niya si Sir Jess doon sa parang makita yung ganon doon sa event niya. So parang ang laking privilege para sa akin. Ang laking sobrang nakakatuwa yung pangyayari na for the first time yung mga bata na before na parang siguro sabihin natin tentative sila ng mga pet or nag-umpisa silang mag-comics pa lang or something or siguro first time pa lang nila makikita yung mga tao behind dun sa mga pangalan na naririnig lang nila before. Yun, parang nakakatuwa na I hope dun sa kasi ako hindi ko sila nakamusta after kasi may mga iba sa kanila na kailangan umuwi ka agad. So hindi ko sila nakumusta kung kumusta yung experience nila dun sa event. Pero judging from their reactions dun sa the mere fact na the mere fact na in-acknowledge nila yung invitation and pumunta sila and nagstay sila is for us is malaking karangalan na talaga na ginawa nila yung bagay na yun. Malaking karangalan sa amin yung na yun.
Yeah.
Somehow na-achieve din ng and like you said na parang yung poetic na nangyari yung yung last event nung so at least na-achieve namin yung gusto namin ma-achieve na i-bridge yung lumang mga veterans ng comics dun sa mga bagong creators ng comics. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So just being able to watch pretty much the comics creators of today, basically they looked like talagang you could tell na they really had a passion for it. There was really a collective na talagang mahal nila yung culture. Okay, so before we end, we have 2 questions. First is from David Heralao. Question for all, but unfortunately Cesar Lyndon had to leave early, so is there a specific process for self-publishing comics? Are there any technical stumbling blocks to look out for?
Well, ang pinaka-technical part would be how would you reproduce your comic book? Yung technology natin ngayon allows for digital desktop printing. I've seen a lot of newer creators go that route. Also, yung digital na photocopying. Also, if you want more, parang more volume, there's yung risograph, which also nag-digital na rin. So there's also digital risograph. That's for per rim ng paper. And also, if you can, yung mas bulk would be offset. Also, meron na rin tayong print on demand and digital print. So marami na silang options. They just have to introduce themselves to yung technology that are available to them. Basic ng pre-production would be knowing what your size, kung ano yung size ng comics na gusto mong gawin. Yung bleeds and cuts mo, how would you translate your work into digital if you are doing traditional work. So those stuff. There's a lot of tutorials naman that are available na hindi dati available sa mga self-publishers. Parang kailangan mo talaga maghanap ng self-publisher. Tapos kailangan mo magkausapin, turuan ka. Pero ngayon, there's a lot of useful na videos available on Facebook and on YouTube. One siguro resource if you are planning to do your own comic book, you could also join workshops. Comiket and Komikon have their own workshops of producing comics. So you have choices. Also, you could join Facebook groups. Indie Comics Manila is a good group of independent comics book creators which shares yung mga resources nila like suppliers and also how to use yung programs. Yun yung advice ko.
Kaya pa, Sir Ariel?
Yung sa yung di ba, yung mga stumbling block for first time comic publishers, yun di ba? So since tackle na yung mga technical aspects, actually yung sa publishing lang yun yung first step. Once you have yung copies mo ng comics, ang yun doon mag-umpisa yung pinakamalaking trabaho talaga is to paano mo i-market yung gawa mo. Also, natutuwa ako doon sa mga bagong publishers comic self-publishers na nakikita ko doon sa tuwing na convention is gano'n sila ka-creative doon sa kasi yung bina-break nila yung mold ng comic publishing. May mga iba gumagawa ng mga gatefold. May mga iba meron mga spot lamination, mga ganun. So, ang ng mga buyers
Okay. All right. So, sorry? Nako.
Kasi kung naka-attend sila ng convention, makikita ng attention nung would-be potential buyer. So, be as creative as possible dun sa planuhin nyo lang. Siguro, pwede mag-start lang muna dun sa traditional way ng paano i-present yung comics, usual. And later on, you could, parang gawin mong, if they're in college, then college and then nasa advertising or nasa related na course, then pwede nilang gamitin yung napag-aralan nila and how to present na yung produkto sa package design. Yung mga ganong klase. How do you package yung product mo in a creative way na makakakuha ng attention dun sa mga dumadaan. Yun.
All right.
And also, you have to talk. If you can talk yung ikaw mismo, you can sell na mismo, then get someone hire someone na talagang
Sir?
madaling magbay mo yung paano i-market yung gawa. Then, you can learn.
Sir, yung connection ho nyo.
yun. Wait.
Yeah, no, medyo na...
I'm spit.
Actually,
Yung
yeah.
internet connection dito.
Actually, with that, I'm gonna transition into the last question. For me, I'm part. I can speak for myself. I'm part of a college org right now that's focused on making comics, and I pretty much help found a school club dun sa high school for comics. So, and they have their share of students who share this same ambition to become, whether self-publisher or whether they want to be signed to a publishing house. They have that passion for to be able to make their own comic books. So, do you have any piece of advice for them?
Siguro pag-aralan muna, iyan muna nila siguro. Kasi mas na ngayon mas democratic na yung market ng madami nang i-promote mo yung sarili mo. I guess siguro bago mag-jump in dun sa kasi once na nag-start mag-design, maraming pera na involved dun . So I guess parang get to know muna yung material mo. Then heavily promoted, and siguro katulad ng din yung sinabi kanina na once na meron ka na malalim na body of work, then probably then you could start publishing na talaga yung comics mo. Kasi sa tagal mo dun sa business, then malalaman mo kung yung ins and out ng community and industry. You could get to know other creators, you could get to know yung mga tao, what they want, sa mga ano yung maganda ba, and ano ba yung versus sa ano ba yung gusto mo. Ganun.
Kaya po, Sir John.
Well, if you are planning to make comic books, yun nga, continue learning. Don't stop na feeling mo magaling ka na and everything. Learn to take in everything that everybody says. Pero yun nga, isa pa, if you're gonna do comics, i-balance nyo yung planning at yung paggawa. Kasi I know a lot of people who want to make comics pero they keep on planning and planning and planning and never doing. So, if you're gonna do comics, start doing then. Start creating your own comics na rin. Also, meron akong sinabi dati na wag kang panghinaan ng loob if hindi gusto ng specific ng ibang tao yung gawa mo. Just keep doing what you want to do. Pag minsan kasi while you could learn from other people, you could also be handicapped by taking too many advices from other people. So, like I said, take what you want from what you can learn. Tapos apply anything that will apply to your situation. Yeah.
All right. So with that, before we go, sir, anything you want to plug? Any yung social media po niyo, any websites, anything? Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, I have a YouTube channel. I just look for Ultra John at sa YouTube. I also pages Digmaang Salinlahi on Facebook at Codename Bathala sa Facebook. Yeah.
Okay. Sir Ariel, you?
Meron ng yung Facebook page, yung The Art of Ariel Atienza. Kailan di pa masyadong updated yung also sa Instagram, yung cartoonista, that's double O, as KARTOOINSTA. And also yung sa, I guess kung gusto nyo, kung nasa DeviantArt pa rin kayo, pwede nyo i-try din. Yun din, same username din, cartoonista.
Okay.
Yun.
For Sir Lindo naman, I'll be posting his Beerkada website and the social medias related to Beerkada on the YouTube description. All right.
Okay.
So, with that, Sir John, Sir Ariel, and for Sir Lyndon as well, thank you very much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. No,
Okay,
no.
thank you then. Thank you for
This,
featuring
Yeah.
us.
this was, this really was more. I, started doing this just for fun then, and part of my thesis. Pero, I actually did from the bottom of my heart, learned a lot. So really, thank you
Yeah.
talaga po.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Alright.
you.
Okay. So for us naman, please follow Splash Comics on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Splash Comics. Actually, on Twitter and Instagram at Splash Comics, and yes, Facebook Splash Comics, Splash Comics. Uh, so please, subscribe, and share to our YouTube channel at Splash Comics as well. I'll hope to post this within the next 24 to 48 hours. Tech willing. Despite technical difficulties abound, we were able to get this done, which I'm truly thankful for. So,
Yeah.
for Sir John, Sir Ariel, Sir Lyndon, for Comic Con Inc., and for Splash Comics, this is Chino and Dean, Unity through Creativity.